going to talk about how brands can work with Buzzfeed, which many of you may not realise that they actually do work with them. So a round of applause, please, for Will.
Thank you very much, everyone, for having me here today. I'm going to talk to you about a few things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Buzzfeed. I'm going to focus more about kind of how we think about the web, some changes that we've seen happening with the internet as a whole, not necessarily entirely related to travel. And then at the end, I'm going to just show you a few examples of travel companies or organizations that I think are doing a really good job of creating great content on the web. So just as way of introduction, Buzzfeed, we're now at over 150 million uniques globally, which makes us probably top 5, well certainly top 5 news and entertainment publisher in the world, which is great. And then a really interesting stat is that 75% of our traffic comes from social referrals. So the vast majority of the traffic we get come because people are finding our stuff and they're sharing it with their friends. So for every one person that finds our stuff because they come directly to Buzzfeed, 3 people come through because that person has then put our content on Facebook or Twitter or emailed it or put it in WhatsApp or wherever it might be. We're also moving very much into video as well. So as part of our investment round recently, we announced the fact we unveiled this thing called Buzzfeed Motion Pictures, and we're averaging over 400 million views of content per month, which is great. And as a result, I mean, I know that we've got people from all over the world here, and awareness of Buzzfeed kind of varies depending on country. But certainly in the UK and absolutely in the US, there's been lots of buzz all around Buzzfeed as everyone gets very excited and starts saying, is this kind of a new model for media, a new model for publishing? So I thought I'd take things back a little bit and just kind of explore a little bit about the history of Buzzfeed and where we've come from and why it is that we've had some of the good fortune that we've had. One of the early editorial principles of Buzzfeed, and I know that you all work very hard, and I know you come here because you're very serious about what you do, but believe it or not, there are people out there who are very bored, and we felt if we could come up with entertaining, fun, distracting, nostalgic content that entertained people who were bored at their desk, and if we could give them a reason to share it with their friends, we could potentially build a very big media company in a very short period of time. Which meant when we started, we focused on content that was just sort of home run content, so things that we thought would share really well. And we did stuff like 34 GIFs that sum up your first sexual experience. Now, what I enjoy about this piece, which we kind of aggregated content from across the web, is trying to guess whether this GIF had been put in by a young lady or a young man. Now, I would suggest to the crowd congregated today that this first GIF was probably from a young lady. So there you go. This next GIF could be from a young lady, potentially. Could also be from a young man. Are there any Arsenal fans here today, by the way? Okay, so we've got a few Arsenal fans. This was a GIF that someone felt summarised their first sexual experience. So there you go. And then one really fun thing about working at Buzzfeed is you see the same GIFs coming through quite frequently, and they're used in different contexts to express different things. Now, I've seen this a few times, but I thought as a GIF that summarised your first sexual experience, it's either very funny or very horrific, depending on your perspective. So there you go. Now, our first kind of pivot as a business was our realization about 3 years ago that, yes, we'd built lots of scale through lots of people enjoying our fun stuff, but actually we could start doing serious stuff as well. And actually, people don't just look at funny things on the web when they're bored at work. They also look at serious things. They also look at The Guardian, they look at the BBC, they look at sites like that. And we thought maybe there was a way that BuzzFeed could create news for a new generation of consumers. Maybe we could create it from the ground up for mobile, for social, and see if we could break stories in a slightly different way. Fast forward 3 years, we've now got reporters all over the world. We've got reporters in Liberia. We're one of the few news organizations that have had staff in Liberia covering what's going on with Ebola. We also scooped where the MH17 bodies were. We have got an incredible journalist in Ukraine called Max Seddon. And not only doing on-the-ground reporting, but also doing quite smart things with social media. So whilst other news organizations were using drone footage and satellite and all those sorts of things to try and work out if Russia was in the Ukraine or not. We were doing those things, but also looking through social media and seeing if anyone was stupid enough to post content saying where they were. And this was a young Russian soldier who was taking selfies of himself in a tank whilst he was bored, without realizing that he was targeting them to the Ukraine. Which is great. And then in the UK, we're also very keen on doing kind of political satire. So we're also doing the breaking news stuff, but we think there's a way of doing kind of private eye for a new generation, really. So here we've got conclusive proof that George Osborne is actually Bob the Builder, which is great and shares really well, and people really enjoy it. So we're very serious about video, as I said. Now, we started with video much in the same way as we started with our post content, kind of aggregating content from across the web and then repackaging it in a slightly more social way. We think about identity a great deal at Buzzfeed. So people share things because they're funny or they're informative, but people also share things to express who they are. So I might share something about people whose heads are upside down or something like that. Now, I also have a 3-month-old son back at home, and in the lead up to the birth of my son, I had lots and lots of people sending me this video saying, haha, this is what's coming for you. So this is an example of video created for the social web.
Were you throwing stuff over the side?
You guys are lucky Daddy's in Canada.
Where's Russell?
So, I am not an expert on travel, unfortunately. Sorry to disappoint you all. But what we do know a little bit about is the web and how people are now using the web to share content. So I thought I would just show you some things that we think about at Buzzfeed and how we're now seeing things change online. So the main thing that we think about a lot is that the internet has changed. There is this idea that there have been various stages of media history, and the web is kind of something that happened in the early 2000s, and now we're just kind of like riding that wave out. And we absolutely think that's not true. We think the web has really had about 3 ages. So the first age of the web was all about portals. It was all about destinations. It was all about places that people went to online. And that worked quite well. There were lots of companies that had good success doing that. There wasn't much else to look at online, so those businesses grew very rapidly. But then famously, in the early 2000s, the quantity of content online just exploded, and Google rose to prominence as the business that was going to help you find what you were looking for. So if you were looking for something in particular, Google was there to help answer your query. And as a result, the web kind of changed again, and the whole web sort of crunched around Google. And I'm sure many of you in the room who were around at the time rushed out and hired an SEO agency or an internal SEO team. And it was all about kind of satisfying the beast that was Google. And that was fine. That kind of worked for a while. But we now think we're in the third age of the web, which is all about social. And I'm sure many people here, if you look at your referral traffic, you'll now know this is true. So social started as a destination. Social was originally a place you went to. You went to Facebook, you went to MySpace, you went to Bebo. But we now think of social as a layer that extends across the whole web. So at Buzzfeed, we have a thing called the Buzzfeed Partner Network, where we give other publishers access to some of our tech tools that allows them to work out where their referral traffic is coming from. Now, if you look at this, for much of 2012, we're tracking referral traffic from Facebook versus Google. For much of 2012, Facebook and Google were equally important. So you need to worry about search and you needed to worry about social. And then towards the end of 2013, suddenly Facebook tweaked their newsfeed algorithm, and by far the most important thing you were doing, whether you were a publisher, a brand, whatever it was, is working out how you could get people to share what you were doing. This kind of segues into my other point, which is destinations online really aren't as important as they used to be. So 2 big reports that have come out in the last 4 months. One, anyone English here, any license fee payer, you should definitely read because you paid for, and one from the New York Times. So the BBC Stringer Report and the New York Times Innovation Report both lament the fact that these very, very big, important publishers had not done a very good job of distribution, not done a very good job of getting their content to people. So in the old world, for the New York Times, they put a lot of effort into printing a newspaper, putting it in a van, giving it to a newspaper delivery boy, and that's the way they got their stuff to consumers. But that doesn't really work anymore. And what they thought they could do is just put stuff on the website and then think people would find it. But actually, that's not enough. In their own words, we are putting less effort into reaching readers' digital doorsteps than we ever did in reaching their physical doorsteps. Now, as a proof point on this, this is homepage traffic to the New York Times over a 2-year period, more than halving, because people just aren't waking up and going to these destinations anymore. They're waking up and they're picking up their mobile and they're looking at Facebook and they're looking at Twitter. And I guess my challenge to you guys is, if the New York Times can't get people to visit their website anymore, maybe you should all be thinking less about how you can get people to your stuff and more about how you can get your stuff to the people who might be interested in it. Just as a counterpoint, this is how we look at our data at Buzzfeed. So this is looking at the last 48 hours on Buzzfeed, the blue traffic being what we call direct traffic or seed traffic, and the red traffic being social traffic. And as you can see, we get double the amount of views, not uniques, but views, because of people sharing all our content. So just from our perspective, in the world of publishing, we think that the old way of advertising online is kind of broken. This is an article from the Wall Street Journal. Marketers seek a banner blindness cure. Pity the poor banner ad. Cutting edge just a few years ago, this pioneer of web advertising is now scorned as hopelessly out of date, a neglected stepchild in an era of web video, widgets, mashups, and social networking. This article was written 7 years ago. 7 years ago, the Wall Street Journal was saying that banner ads suck. Banner ads are not a good solution to delivering branded messages online. I don't think anyone in this room would have ever gone home and said to their significant other or friend, I saw an awesome banner ad today. That was amazing. And as we move into the era of mobile, it's even worse. Like, no one has ever clicked on a mobile banner ad and been happy. Like, you click on a mobile banner ad by mistake and you desperately search out the X button to get rid of it, because it's an awful experience. Like, it's absolutely awful. And yet we all laugh. I wouldn't be surprised if lots of people in this room today are putting part of their marketing budget into the things that they know themselves don't work very well. And it doesn't just not work for brands yourselves, it also doesn't work for us. So this is a way of comparing the amount that you can monetize 1,000 people looking at your media property. So in the era of newspapers, you could make quite good money from lots of people looking at your newspaper. You could sell that to advertisers. Attention was quite a good value proposition. As we moved into digital, as I've said, banners didn't work very well, so the amount of money you could make was much, much smaller. But lots of publishing companies continued to try and survive with that as their value proposition. Move into mobile and it almost disappears. Like, you just can't make a proper publishing business from mobile banner ads. You won't survive. Nonetheless, human beings are quite stupid and lazy, and we react to this sort of really weak monetization opportunity by just covering our sites and banners. This is from a very big, very important news site with a strong history in this country, and as you can see, they've got a cereals ad, a automotive ad, a fashion ad, even a small William Hill ad before anyone can get to what they're looking for. This is how weak advertising really is online these days. So BuzzFeed's pitch to brands as a whole and certainly travel advertisers as well is that advertising can be so much better. So I'm a big fan of David Ogilvy, commonly referred to as the father of advertising. Ogilvy said, good advertising should deliver value. Good advertising should fit the form and format of the media that we are delivering it on. Now, he spent most of his career working with magazines and newspapers, which meant he said, have a strong headline, have good copy, make it look like an article, make it deliver value so that when people are looking through the paper, they're not distracted by some silly typeface or some big idiotic image, that they find what they expect from a newspaper or magazine. And that's not just the case with print. So you think about the best cinema ads, the Guinness ads, the horses running through the ocean. It fits with what people expect from the cinema. It's got the high drama, the impact, the audio, the visual, all those sorts of things. That's why those ads worked so well and were so impressive. So the question for all of us today is how can we create a ad experience that is native to mobile and native to social? How can we communicate with our target audiences in a way that fits with what they're expecting from this thing they're holding in their hand? We think that brands have got to earn their place in the feed. Brands have got to not just think about what matters to them, but also think about what matters to the audience. How can you give them something of value? How can you entertain them? How can you give them a piece of content that they can use to communicate with their friends? Now, the wonderful thing about all you guys in this room is you actually have a far easier job at this than most people. So as part of my job, I have to go all over the place and speak to people who are selling toothpaste and who are selling tires and all these things, and you try and get them to realize that talking about toothpaste isn't very interesting. Saying 12 reasons why my toothpaste is better than this other guy's isn't very good, and no one's going to enjoy that. But with travel advertising, you work in a field that people want to consume. People have always enjoyed this stuff. Publishing companies have been built off of the sort of content that you guys have yourselves. So how can we look at that, and how can we put it in a format that is native and natural to the web? So as a few examples, this is from Tourism Australia, 10 things you didn't know you could do in Australia. It's interesting, it's enticing, but it's also delivered by Tourism Australia, and it's good enough that people are going to look at it and maybe chuckle a little bit, maybe learn something they didn't already know, and then crucially hit the share button and put it on their Facebook, put it on their Twitter. We also like doing things about sort of inside information, things that people didn't already know. So 20 things locals love about Barcelona. It's also got identity baked into it. So people from Barcelona are more likely to share this, or conversely also argue with it and put it on Facebook and go, oh no, this isn't the best bar, this is the best bar. And then cultural things. So for Rethink Israel, we did a great campaign about 19 Israeli delicacies that aren't hummus. It's kind of funny, but it's also framed in a way that delivers real value and kind of educates people a little bit more about Israel. So I said at the beginning that we're excited about video as well. We haven't done any video with travel companies yet, but I have got two good videos that I thought are a great example of creating content that is advertiser-driven but still good enough that people read it, watch it, and choose to share it with their friends. One's about cats, one's about dogs. Who likes cats more? I like cats more. Who likes dogs more? Oh. Well, I like cats more. So we're going to watch the one about cats.
Dear Kitten, since I have hissed at you the customary 437 times, it is now my duty as the head of the household to begrudgingly welcome you. Perhaps you are here to replace me, but I must do my duty and educate you on your new surroundings, as Maximilian once did for me. Rest in peace. Dear Kitten, this room here is basically a crapshoot. Either you get the petting of your life, and I mean two hands, like you don't even know what's going on, or they just lie there and don't do anything. For hours, it's weird. Oh, and I should also point out, on special occasions, they will leave the underwear drawer open to signal their appreciation of me. Just to be clear, it's my spot. It's perfect in there. It's like sleeping surrounded by underwear. Well, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Dear Kitten, I remember when I could fit in a shoe. There's nothing like it. Being engulfed in 360 degrees of foot smell. Enjoy it while you can. Dear Kitten, because you are so small, you cannot jump, which is sad. Sad for you. But eventually you will, and you will find the places that I refer to as up. This will come in handy, especially around the human larva, which I know smells like milk, but can be a bit grabby. Dear Kitten, you should be aware that there are two kinds of food. The first is sort of a dehydrated brown niblet. I think they gave us these because they're training us to be astronauts. Just a guess. The second kind is wet food. It is so special they keep it in little armored metal casings that no claw can penetrate. With no claws to speak of, the humans can somehow open them. It's like some dark magic. Dear kitten, I should warn you of the monster known as vacuum. It can eat and yell at the same time. And I've seen it eat everything. Seriously, like a paperclip and 2 cat toys. Didn't even flinch. To hide from vacuum, you may use the curtains of invisibility. Oh yeah, you're good. Good hiding. Oh boy. Dear kitten, one final note. Once in a while you might see a little red dot. I'm going to tell you this right now. It is real, and it can be caught. I did it once. I held it for a full minute, but when I lifted my paws, it was gone. So kitten, welcome to the household. You'll do just fine.
So, my challenge to you guys is if people selling cat food can create really fun, great, entertaining content, you guys work in travel, like there's so much you can do. And in my experience, travel advertisers just hold themselves back because they don't commit to really creating something of value to the audience rather than something that's of value to them. Oh, no, that's the dog one. In terms of takeaways, we're in the age of social. I'm sure everyone in this room knows it. It's all about creating things that are good enough that people are going to share. Homepages aren't what they are. Destinations don't really matter that much anymore. You've got to work out ways that you can get people excited about what you're doing and sharing what you're doing with their friends and their colleagues. And ultimately, this takes us back to what advertising has always been about, which is great content, executed well, with the audience front of mind, is what wins everything. Thank you very much.